Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, Looking After Yourself and Others. My name is Kevin and I'll be your host. I work in the capacity building team here at the Australia Council and look forward to spending some time with you today. I first would like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of countries throughout Australia. I pay my deep respect to elders past, present, and future. I invite you to ground yourself. Place your feet on the ground and connect with the country where you are today. Currently on screen, there is a maroon PowerPoint holding slide with text, video boxes with our guest and Auslan interpreter. I, the host, am a fair-skinned man with brown hair and am wearing a light blue shirt today. Welcome to the Creative Connections, everyone. I hope that you are finding these sessions useful. Our aim is to support you during this complex period ahead. The webinar series will run over the coming months and we will be online twice a week. These sessions are bite-sized learning moments for you. We will look forward to introducing you to some amazing speakers that will lead topics that are important to you. We hope to learn together, share, and explore how we will adapt our leadership, our practices, and our digital capability. I invite you to register to as many as you can, and please share these with others. Before I introduce you to our amazing guests today, I just have a few housekeeping items to go through. Firstly, our live captioning is available again through the system stream text, and you can find a link to this in the chat section, which you can access at the bottom of the screen. Please note that our URL has changed over the last couple of days, so make sure you grab the one in the chat section. Please also note that the default view for desktops is a gallery view so that everyone can see all the guests and the interpreters. Unfortunately, Zoom only allows you to see the video of the person speaking if you're on a mobile device. Next, we would love to hear from you again. And if you've got a question, please feel free to send those in the Q&A tab. Again, you can find this at the bottom of your screen. We'll be answering these at the end of the session. And if we don't get to yours today, please feel free to send us an email and we will try and answer those post the session. We also may again invite some people to ask some questions live and note that these will be recorded. The discussion today is centered around the topic for today's webinar. If you've got any urgent inquiries, please contact us separately and we can make sure that we put you in touch with the right person here at the Australia Council. At any point, if you've got any technical support needs, please raise your hand. You can do this using the hand raise feature in Zoom, and you can find this at the bottom of your screen. Or just send us a quick email, someone is checking our inbox. A recording of today's webinar will be available and we will send those in an email after the session. And specifically for today, just remember that if there's anything that comes up for you in today's session, make sure that you seek advice. And I know that Tracy and Greta will be providing us with a reminder on where to seek that advice. So just a quick announcement. This week, the Australia Council, of course, announced our Resilience Fund. The fund includes 3 streams focusing on immediate support for survival, adaptation, and creation. Applications for this fund will open today, and we will soon publish the information on our website. Once you're on our website, which is australiacouncil.gov.au, navigate to our grants section where you will find this information. Also, note that the applications for the Arts and Disability Mentoring Initiative have been reopened and the closing date is now Tuesday, the 14th of April. Currently on screen is a PowerPoint slide, text and 2 photos to introduce the guest speakers. The first image is of a woman in a black top in front of a green background and a second of a woman in a white dress in front of a floral background. The impact of COVID-19 on our community is immense. So many of us and our colleagues are in very, very difficult situations with limited options. And this is having a direct impact on our mental health and our well-being. Today, we are joined by Tracy Margieson from the Arts Wellbeing Collective and Greta Bradman, a psychologist, performer and trustee at the Arts Centre Melbourne. We invite Tracy and Greta to provide us some practical advice and a discussion around how we can look after ourselves and also others in this difficult moment. Tracy and Greta, thank you so much for being here with us today. We really appreciate your time. Listen, I will now hand over to you. I believe that you have some slides to share as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Kevin. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for registering and watching today. I've just put up a holding slide which has a blue background with a close-up of the Arts Centre Melbourne Spire and the title across it, Looking After Yourself and Others, Mental Health in Complex Environments. I'm Tracy, I'm a white woman. I have short dark hair and wearing glasses, a black top and a denim jacket. Thank you so much to Kevin, Ian, Francis, Laura and everyone at the Australia Council for your incredible work and also for inviting us to be a part of Creative Connections. I work on the Arts Wellbeing Collective at Arts Centre Melbourne, which is situated on the lands of the Wurundjeri and Bunurong, and it's a place that's been a home of storytelling for thousands of years. I'd like to actually give a shout out to the other Australia Council session that's on this afternoon, the First Nations Roundtable for Arts and Creative Independence and Organisations. It will be focusing on the topic of mental health, mental and spiritual health and well-being. And it's really wonderful that we can spend time thinking about our mental health and well-being early on and prioritising our individual and collective health as much as we can. I'm delivering today's session, as Kevin said, with Greta Bradman, who's a clinical psychologist and performing artist herself, and also an incredibly valued member of the Arts Wellbeing Collective advisory group. For those of you who might not be familiar with it, the Arts Wellbeing Collective is an Arts Centre Melbourne initiative that comprises a consortium of arts and cultural organisations who work together to promote positive mental health and wellbeing in the performing arts. We collaborate with our member organisations, subject matter experts, performing arts practitioners and clinical and positive psychologists to co-design initiatives that are then shared widely across the industry. We're striving for transformative change in our collective awareness of, attitudes to and management of mental health and wellbeing in the performing arts. And never before has this work felt so relevant, as our creative industries have been greatly impacted and disrupted in ways that no one saw coming. The closures and cancellations that happened so rapidly as a result of COVID-19 have affected and are continuing to affect all of us. We want to take this time today to talk about some simple, practical strategies for looking after ourselves and looking after others as we negotiate this very complex environment. Some of what we share today might simply validate what you've been doing already and work as a bit of a reminder to do more of the good more. And some of what we share might be new information or a different frame around something with which you're already familiar. Hopefully this helps to plant some seeds about strategies to try and ideas to explore. But first up, let's have a look at what this concept of mental health is. Generally in our industry, there's really great awareness of mental health, so this is really just to frame today's discussion and to get us on the same page with regards to terminology. Often you hear mental health and mental illness used interchangeably, But the World Health Organization actually defined mental health as a state of well-being in which every individual realizes their own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to community. This slide that I've just put up has a blue background with that definition from the World Health Organization on it. Mental health then is really about what's going well and with an expectation of normal stress. It's pretty clear then that something as unsettling and global as COVID-19 would have an impact on our mental health. And thus it's completely normal to feel sad or stressed, irritable, anxious, confused, scared, angry, and many other emotions during such a crisis. Our mental health is as individual and complex as every person out there. But one of the useful frameworks for considering mental health is what's known as the mental health continuum. And it's a concept of having good mental health at one end and poor mental health at the other. And the slide now has an arrow on it that fades from red to green, representing the mental health continuum. Everyone is positioned somewhere on the continuum, and where you are on this continuum can shift throughout the course of your life, throughout the course of a month, or even throughout the course of a day. How much time you spend in the green and your position on the continuum can be impacted by a range of factors that are both in and out of your control. So factors that are inside your control might be things like your self-care, the support networks and relationships that you've set up around you, and so on. And things outside your control might be your biology, unexpected life events, or COVID-19. It's normal to have ups and downs and shift along the continuum. And if we remember that World Health Organization definition of mental health, there is that expectation of some normal stress. And this could be any kind of stressful situation. And typically the stress will resolve when the situation resolves. So something becomes a mental health problem or a mental illness when the feelings are of such long duration and such high intensity that they start to impact on a person's ability to function in everyday life. At the green end of the continuum, people tend to show resilience and high levels of well-being. So that doesn't mean that they never experience any challenges to their mental health, but rather that they draw on a range of coping mechanisms and supports to effectively manage any difficulties as they come along. I think this is really good to note for our understanding of resilience. Resilience isn't necessarily characterized by that idea of kind of water off a duck's back, nothing bothers them mentality. It's more about being able to bring into being coping strategies, support, and protective factors to help maintain positive mental health. It's interesting to consider resilience in this context, where we are faced not only with a global pandemic and all the fear and uncertainty that may accompany that, but also potentially lost work, disruption to how we would normally work, less physical time with our family and friends, some social isolation, even just that difficulty surrounding simple everyday tasks like going to the shops. And this makes our self-care and consciously paying attention to and building up our personal protective practices more important than ever. Just returning to that holding slide now. I'm going to chat through sort of three basic principles for our self-care, for those personal protective factors to give us those things that we can draw on when we're faced with this stress and uncertainty that we are all faced with at the moment. And then Greta is going to share some of the benefits of habits during times of uncertainty, and then we'll share some resources for further support as well. So first up, taking care of ourselves. Our default position in the arts is almost instantly to look to others, to look to how we can support others. How can we help? What can we do? What's needed? The most important thing you can do in looking after others is to check in on yourself first. It's that old adage that you can't pour from an empty cup, or to fit your own oxygen mask first before helping others. It's really difficult to support others and be there for them when we are experiencing heightened stress ourselves. So we really want to start with ourselves, the best thing that we can do. And just start with the basics. Try to eat well, sleep soundly, and exercise. Give yourself a break if your diet isn't perfect all the time. Sometimes you might just need the comfort of a familiar food. It's just all about balance and really what helps you to be your best. Similarly for exercise, you might not have access to your gym or your running buddies, but really simple things like brisk walking, skipping, even stretching are all really good. There's countless benefits to exercise, and our best resource is our health as it impacts everything else. And of course, if you are feeling unwell, listen to your body, rest up and recover properly. A great first step in thinking about some of these things is to reflect on what's worked for you before. What usually gives you energy and comfort when you need it most? If it's something that you might not be able to do easily in this current situation, is there a part of it that might be possible? Or is there a different activity that might give you that same outcome? Ideally, really aim to do something that you enjoy every day. On that vein too, you might need to put aside some of your long-term work or your long-term artistic and creative goals in order to focus on some of those short-term goals of immediate need. That's totally fine, and you are so not alone in needing to do this. If you need to stock shelves at your local grocery store, apply for assistance, apply to pause loan repayments, whatever you need to do it proudly. If you've ever thought of a dual or triple or quadruple career focus to help navigate our turbulent industry at the best of times, now's a really great time to do a bit of research, study and preparation, and maybe you'll be able to come out of this even more resilient than you were before. So next up, once we are taking care of ourselves, looking to take care of others. We are all in this together. Every person in our industry, pretty much every person in the world, has been impacted in some way, and support and kindness just go such a long way. Everyone will have their own response to what's happening, and many of these responses are due to fear, so just be kind and offer support. If someone seeks your counsel, simply listen non-judgmentally, ask what might help, be clear about what you can give, and be ready and willing to refer them to other supports. And as I mentioned, we'll bring up some of those supports that exist already at the end of the session. When we're not connected in the same ways that we usually are, when we haven't got those same incidental opportunities to spot those kind of early signs that someone might be struggling, those behaviour changes and so on, we need to actually be even more kind, even more vigilant, even more connected in the ways that we can be, and really actively looking after each other and calling that out. And also, if we are offered help and we need help, really actively accepting that as well. If you can too, try not to engage in catastrophizing conversations or hyperbole. Encourage people to focus on things that they can control and those basics of good mental and physical health. So as we mentioned, diet, sleep, exercise, and also reducing excessive exposure to media and social media and seeking support. Which brings us to the third principle that I just wanted to touch on before handing over to Greta, which is around keeping perspective and balance. While it's totally reasonable to be concerned about what's happening, try to remember that medical, scientific and public health experts around the world are working hard to contain this virus and to treat those affected and to develop a vaccine as quickly as possible. Being exposed to really large volumes of negative information can heighten our feelings of anxiety. And while it's definitely important to stay informed, you might find it useful to limit your media intake. That might mean seeking information and updates at specific times during the day, maybe once or twice during the day. That sudden and near constant stream of news reports about the outbreak can really cause anybody to feel worried. So really consider when and how you're getting your information. Consider what sources of information that you're getting as well. We want to stay informed by these reliable news sources, but try not to be overwhelmed by opinion or panic. And engage in those parts of social media that help you stay connected in a really positive way. So people sharing really great resources or staying in touch with loved ones or people that you might not be able to connect with in person. And also it's really key to just remember that this situation is temporary and it's going to get better. And the creative industries are going to bounce back in incredible ways that I think in some ways we can't even conceive of yet. I don't even think we can conceive of how awesome we are sometimes and how fantastic our industry is and how resilient and creative we are by nature to help us get through things and get through this and to bounce back from the situation. So taking care of yourselves, taking care of each other and keeping perspective and balance. And I'll just hand over to Greta.
Thanks, Tracy. To describe myself, I'm a white woman with dark brown hair wearing a stripy sort of brown and black top. I'm sitting in a cream coloured armchair. There's a bookshelf behind me with music books, including lots of music scores, as well as psychology, philosophy and history books. And before I go any further, I'd like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet. For me here in St Kilda, Melbourne, that's the Boonwurrung people. And I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. First things first, I want to take you through a breathing exercise, which will take 4 to 5 minutes. The instructions I'll be giving you during this exercise are to breathe in through your nose over a count of 6, then pause for a count of 4 with your lungs full of air, and then breathe out through your mouth over a count of 8, and then pause for a count of 4 before breathing in again through your nose over a count of 6, and so on. We'll be repeating that another 4 times. It might feel weird and it takes practice, so just do your best. The main thing to remember is breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth, and fully exhaling when you do breathe out, and with a pause in between each in and out breath. You ready? All right, begin by sitting back in a comfortable position. Close your eyes if that feels okay for you. You can leave them open if you prefer. Often folks find closing their eyes helpful, but there's no right or wrong. And take a breath in through your nose. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And pause with air resting inside your lungs. 2, 3, 4. And breathe out through your mouth. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And pause before breathing in. 2, 3, 4. And again, take a breath in through your nose. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And pause with the air resting inside your lungs. 3, 4. And breathe out through your mouth. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And pause. And breathe in through your nose. And pause. And breathe out through your mouth. 2, 3, 4. And pause. And last time, breathe in through your nose. And pause with the air inside your lungs and out through your mouth. And pause. Nice. Allow your body to take over your breathing again. And allow yourself to breathe in and out of your nose if that's comfortable for you. But bring your attention to the air as it travels in and out of your nostrils. If you have a cold and your nose is blocked, then you can do the same through your mouth. So as you bring your attention to the air as it travels in and out of your nostrils, you don't have to do anything about it. You're just noticing, as if you were a curious scientist observing the breath for the very first time. Without judgment or preconception about what it means, you're just noticing. Notice differences in the sensation of the air as it travels in and out of your nostrils. Maybe the air is cooler on its way in than on its way out. Maybe the air flows more freely through one nostril than the other. Just notice, you don't have to do anything about it. And when your mind wanders elsewhere, which it will do, maybe to other thoughts about the future or about the past, maybe to other sensations or sounds in your environment, when your mind wanders, just notice where it has taken you. Gently unhook from that place and guide your focus back to the breath. You could do this over and over again. Each time, just guide your attention back to where you intend it to be. And every time you do that, it's an opportunity to practice using your attention muscle, which is one of your most wonderful resources and something that only gets stronger with practice. Remembering to bring your attention back to the air as it moves in and out of your nostrils. And now I'm going to ask you to take just one more intentional breath in through your nose and out through your mouth over the counts as before. And while you do that, you can congratulate yourself for being here today in service of your mental health and your well-being and that of others around you as well. So let's begin. Breathe in through your nose, 2, 3, 4. Pause and breathe out. Okay, and allow your body to resume taking care of your breath. Good work. Well, good morning. I'm Greta. I'm a registered psychologist. I work in private practice at a clinic called The Mind Room. I'm a performing artist as well, and I present Weekend Brunch on ABC Classic. Why did I just take you through that breathing exercise with a side of mindful attention training? Because no matter what is going on for you or how stressed out you are, your breath is always there for you. It's always there to help shift your physical state from fight and flight towards a more relaxed state of rest and digest. And this is because controlled breathing can actively influence your autonomic nervous system, which regulates various bodily functions from heart rate and blood pressure through saliva production, digestion, even the production of adrenaline. During times of stress, your breath can be your friend, although it can also take you further into a state of fight and flight as well. We're going to touch on both of those things. So long, slow breaths with a focus on the out breath and making sure you breathe out fully. It stimulates activation of rest and digest, so the parasympathetic nervous system. In this state, your heart rate lowers, as does your blood pressure. You're able to think more reflectively. Your digestive system is ready to get digesting. You might have even noticed in that exercise we did a minute ago, that sense of sort of a shift towards a more centered state. Rapid or shallow breaths will actually stimulate activation of fight and flight, the sympathetic nervous system. And from this state, we might notice a dry mouth from less saliva production, a faster heart rate, sweaty palms, that feeling of adrenaline coursing through our body, even shaking as our muscles are ready to run or fight. And we tend to go looking for threats in our environment when we're in this state, and our ability is reduced when it comes to thinking reflectively or deeply or indeed creatively. We're just looking, scanning for threats. And this is because we humans like to maintain balance or equilibrium between how we feel in our body and what's going on with our thoughts. So when we feel that fight and flight sensation in our body, we go looking for threats in our environment that can justify how we feel. And at the moment, there are plenty of threats around in our environment. They're real, they're out there, but they don't necessarily benefit from our focusing on them. And when we do grab onto such details in our environment, those details of threat, this can in turn exacerbate our physical sense of stress, and the whole cycle can ramp up until you or I are feeling pretty darn anxious. Attention training, the process where you intentionally notice where your focus has gone, just notice, you don't have to judge yourself for it, and actively bring your focus back to where you intend it to be, such as the breath, is really helpful with this. This is because, and this is a really important point, you cannot control your thoughts. You just can't do it. It's impossible. If I say for the next 10 seconds, don't think about a pink elephant, I guarantee there'll be a pink elephant in your mind there somewhere. But if I say for the next 10 seconds, when you think of the pink elephant, just notice the pink elephant and bring your attention back to the breath. The pink elephant will still be there, but you don't have to do anything with it. Just notice it and guide your focus back to where you intend it to be. And you can do this over and over again. It's a skill that with practice you can get better at. And this is one of the benefits of mindfulness practice. Mindfulness can actively help strengthen your ability to direct your attention where you want it to be. And it can help you loosen the impact of certain unhelpful thoughts for you. And part of this is because mindfulness practice can help not only help you guide your attention to where you intend it to be, but it can also mean that you're spending more time with the activation of the frontal lobes, which are responsible, amongst other things, for reflective thinking, rather than really activating the amygdala, the emotion center responsible for, threat-based emotions. Another thing I want to highlight about shallow breathing before we move on, it's common for people when they're stressed to shallow breathe or even to hold their breath. When you shallow breathe, the old air at the bottom of your lungs just kind of sits around, not going anywhere. And this can inadvertently contribute to activating the fight and flight response. So make sure you breathe out fully, particularly when you are feeling anxious. Breathe out to avoid banking air in the bottom of your lungs. Okay, so in the rest of our time, I want to touch on two things. First up, the importance of cultivating habits and rituals of connection during this time of physical isolation. Second, I'll talk about accessing mental health resources, including some welcome changes to the MBS, the Medical Benefits Scheme, that make it possible to access psychological services during this period of physical isolation. But first, to cultivating habits and rituals of connection. What is one thing you do or can do on a daily basis to cultivate a healthy habit in each of the following areas? You can think about this for yourself. One physical habit, a mental habit, a creative habit, and a ritual of connection or a social habit. I want to walk through each four, and starting with rituals of connection. Research shows that when you text or email someone or chat via text, your brain doesn't release the love hormone or connection hormone called oxytocin. But when you call someone or video chat, you do release oxytocin. Why does that matter? Oxytocin is one of the 3 feel-good hormones alongside dopamine and serotonin, which leaves us feeling good even in tough times. Oxytocin promotes relaxation, trust, and a feeling that we have stability and some control over our immediate environment. And most important of all in this current state of physical isolation, a release of oxytocin when you're speaking with someone can increase your sense of being understood and connecting empathetically with that other person, even when you're not able to physically touch them. And that's so important for you and me right now. So I encourage you to cultivate a daily ritual of connection. Reach out to people using talk and video chat as much as possible, especially those you're closest to. Think about your talk to type ratio. Is this optimal, both from a workflow perspective, but also from a connection perspective? And remember, we're all in this together, as Tracy said. So cultivating rituals of connection with those you're closest with will be as much benefit to the other person as it is for you. And I'm holding my cup of tea because research has also shown that we are more open-hearted and conducive to chat when we are holding a warm beverage. So drink up, I say. Moving to creativity now, when you're creative, you're curious, present, and the tendency toward what ifs, if onlys, and being judgmental is put on hold. Creativity is like a bit of a bridge into the present moment where uncertainty about the future or concerns about the past, they're parked for a moment. So what I'm talking about here is not about anything. It's not about being creative for the sake of contributing to something bigger. This is about using creativity to connect you back to the here and now. I'll leave it to you to think about what a creative habit would look like for you. It might be scheduling 15 minutes a day, and then in that 15 minutes doing a range of activities to give you some rather embarrassing, potentially, insight into what I like to do. I like writing haiku about nature because it takes me completely out of the zone of what's going on at the moment. I also love singing plain song in the shower, and I love cooking and sort of actively incorporating creativity into my cooking. One evidence-based suggestion I have for you is keeping a gratitude journal. Journaling once a week about 5 things you're grateful for has been shown to increase dopamine and serotonin levels and lower symptoms of depression. When you journal, be specific about what you're grateful for and go beyond the obvious. This isn't about comparative gratitude or should gratitude. I should be grateful for still having some income coming in at the moment. No, dig down into what you are genuinely grateful for and find gratitude in your world. So to physical habits, this habit is for the sake not only of your physical health, but also your mental health and your cognitive health. Make sure you include at least 30 minutes of moderate physical activity into your daily routine. Either get out and go for a brisk walk or a run, or download an app and exercise in your own home. And also be sure to get a good dose of natural light every day as well, and keep up your sleep habits as well. Oh, I could bang on about sleep for a long time, so I'll just park that for today. To mental health, the level of uncertainty and lack of control that is around us at the moment can leave us vulnerable to our brain becoming a filter where we seek out further evidence for that sense of uncertainty and lack of control. So habits around mental health need to actively work at bolstering areas of control as well as our sense of acceptance and shifting our relationship with uncertainty. So what are some habits you have or would be willing to cultivate toward your mental health? Well, one of them I would say is actively add an extra dose of good news to your daily information diet. For instance, on Instagram, follow Reasons to Be Cheerful and Factivist. Also, routinize any social media consumption. Schedule times where you permit yourself to go onto social media and notice of how you feel afterwards. If it leaves you feeling good, then fine, maintain course with keeping it as part of your day. But if it leaves you feeling anxious and uncertain, then switch off. Even if you feel your stress at the moment, find another medium to stay in. Use a mindfulness app. So if it's first thing in the morning and before you go to bed at night, that's perfect. My pick for you would be the app called Waking Up with Sam Harris. Sam is a neuroscientist, philosopher, New York Times best-selling author. And I know from my own clients as well as friends in the performing arts, Waking Up with Sam Harris hits the spot for many. Other mindfulness apps which are great include Buddhify, Smiling Mind, and Calm. Mindfulness in these forums is an attention training de-stressing tool that brings you back into the present moment. It helps you unhook from the worries beyond what's going on right now. And also think carefully about your news sources. So sometimes in a bid to reduce our uncertainty, we read as much as we can from any news source that we can get our hands on. But this can increase our levels of uncertainty and perceived lack of control without really contributing to anything that can meaningfully help us in our lives. And it can leave us feeling helpless. It can leave us feeling like, well, other people aren't doing enough, so I need to do more. I should be doing more, not just within my own life, but for the arts, for instance. And we can develop a bad case of the shoulds, and particularly when we're in self-isolation and don't have the usual avenues to help us overcome our shoulds, they can multiply. So connect with others and share your shoulds. Make this an overt practice. Share your shoulds, allow others to help you defuse them and help you understand that you are doing enough. So finally, I want to talk about accessing mental health resources and services. First up, visit artswellbeingcollective.com.au for practical mental health and wellbeing resources designed for folks within the performing arts, informed by folks who work within the performing arts. And you'll see the slide up now having a blue background and giving you a range of phone numbers and resource links. If you want to read more about more stuff you can do to support your mental health, then go to beyondblue.org. They have a fantastic comprehensive list of national helplines and websites as well. If you need immediate help, then the number for Lifeline, 13 11 14, or visit lifeline.org. The Support Act Wellbeing Helpline is also there, offering counselling services 24 hours a day for anyone working within the performing arts industry in Australia. It's a collaboration between the Arts Wellbeing Collective and Support Act, two fantastic charities, and that number is 1800 959 500. And what about if you want to see a psychologist? Well, for starters, when you find the right psych, there is never a bad time to reach out and see someone. They can always be helpful for you in your life. At the moment, changes to the medical benefits scheme mean that you can readily access mental health services from your home via telehealth. And if you have a referral from your GP, which means that you have a mental health care plan, then you can access at the moment 10 bulk billed sessions with zero out-of-pocket expenses for you with a psychologist via telehealth. Private clients can access telehealth too and pay for the appointment, and many clinics are offering reduced rates at the moment for those experiencing financial hardship. So if you call up and that's you, make sure you mention your financial position. Well, that's it from me. Thank you to everyone at the Australia Council for having us today. Tracy and I are very happy to field questions at this point.
Thank you so much, Greta, and thank you so much, Tracy. I really appreciated the moment that you've created and held us in a space so that we can practice some of those very, very important habits. So thank you so much. Listen, we are running out of time fairly quickly, so we're going to quickly jump to some questions, if you don't mind. We've got a couple come through. There was a question from this is maybe Tracy, you can answer this one, or both of you. It's from Ella. She's not in Melbourne, and she was just sort of wondering as to how she can get involved with the Arts Wellbeing Collective, even though she's not based in Melbourne.
Yeah, awesome. Hi, Ella. We'd love to have you involved. So there's lots of different things. All of the Arts Wellbeing Collective resources and programs are all open access and free of charge for everyone who works in the performing arts anywhere in the world. So our website is artswellbeingcollective.com.au, and you can sign up to be a member, which is free. You can look at the resources, which are all there, ready to be looked at. They're not behind a firewall or anything like that. And once we're back in the office, you can also order some hard copies of resources and we can post those out to you. We're also working as fast as we can to get a lot of our face-to-face content online. So the workshops that we would typically run, which would be the thing that you'd kind of need to be in Melbourne for, I guess luckily, fortunately, silver linings, we're going to be getting those online as soon as we can. So yeah, visit the website and feel free to send an inquiry through the inbox that goes to myself or my colleague. And yeah, reach out and say hi. We always love chatting about different things.
Thanks for that. Okay, we've got a few more coming through. One is quite interesting. The question is from Clint, wanting to know as to whether, in this moment, whether we should focus our energies on our independent efforts, particularly while in isolation, instead of collaborative efforts, so we have more control over our creative and mental emotional aspects and not being exposed to others who are also being affected by the situation.
I think I can answer that, Kevin. I would say that it depends, Clint, on the individual and what works for you. But I would say whether it be in your private practice, if you decide to sort of go it alone with what you're working on, or if you're collaborating, then intentionally and overtly incline toward those aspects of your environment and of your task that don't get sort of into that cycle of anxiety, uncertainty, and that sense of lack of control. So really be intentional with where you direct your attention, including not only with your thoughts, but with your conversation with others. So just keep things constructive and keep an open dialogue on what is working for you in that sense, and be guided, but understand really what you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing, in terms of having conversations that might bring up challenging feelings for you, and ask, is that constructive for me, or is that serving the desired outcome that I have in mind with this creative process?
And then maybe a final question from Jules is if you've got any information or can direct us to information around how to find a psychologist that are participating in telehealth, of course, with the latest announcement that's been made. Do you have any information or know where we can find information?
Yeah, so I guess the one advantage at the moment is you can find a psychologist via telehealth that isn't necessarily in your area. So the Mind Room where I work, for instance, we have about 30 psychologists and we're completely online now. So there's no one physical in our practice, and I don't think that we're alone in that. So essentially, if you have a psychological practice in mind that you know of or that someone has recommended, I would suggest getting in touch with them, because chances are they're offering telehealth.
Fantastic. Now, that's maybe all time we have. I'm really aware that quite a few people on this call is also doing another session at 12 o'clock. So before we finish, Tracy and Greta, is there anything else that you want to just maybe add before we wrap up?
Tracy, for me, I would say at this time, incline toward kindness, not just with other people, but also within yourself, and go looking for those moments where you can be kind.
Yeah, it's sort of, similar, just taking care of yourself and others, and I think really actively looking for what positives we can take out of this. There's a lot of, I'm just blown away by everything that I'm seeing from our beautiful industry and from our leaders who are just working tirelessly under immense pressure and just doing such a wonderful people first job. It's just incredible. So I think just really seeing the great things that are happening around us and really kind of shouting out how wonderful everyone is responding. I think it's really just wonderful. It's just so heartening. Just taking care of yourself.
Great. Well, thank you so much again, both of you. We really appreciate your time, and thanks everyone else for joining us. Just before we say goodbye, a quick reminder that next week our 2 sessions is focused. Our first one is on platforms for distribution and experiencing of digital work by Dr. Christy Dina. That's on Wednesday, the 8th of April. And then the session with Lenine Burke, advocating a specific conversation around independent artists is fact on Thursday and not our usual Friday. Of course, it's a public holiday on Friday. So please join us next week. And it was great to see you again today. And have a good weekend, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye.